Calling to order the Operations Committee meeting on September 16th at 9:30 a.m. Roll call, please.
Director Bragman,
Here.
Director Gibson,
Here.
Director Kohler,
Here.
Vice Chair Schmidt,
Here.
and Chair Russell.
Here. I need a motion to adopt the agenda.
Move approval. Second.
Any public comment on the agenda?
There are none.
Roll call, please.
Director Bragman,
Aye.
Director Gibson,
Aye.
Director Kohler,
Aye.
Vice Chair Schmidt,
Aye.
and Chair Russell.
Aye. Any public comment on items not on the agenda?
There are none.
Okay. I need a motion to approve the minutes.
Move approval of the minutes. That's a second.
That's a second, thank you.
Roll call, please.
Director Bragman,
Aye.
Director Gibson,
Aye.
Director Kohler,
Aye.
Vice Chair Schmidt,
Aye.
and Chair Russell.
Aye. Okay, item 2, advanced metering implementation.
Good morning, directors. Crystal Yesman, Director of Engineering. About 9 months ago, we finished a request for proposal with various consultants to prepare an implementation plan for AMI. And today we're here to present the final report. And, I'll pass it over to Kristen Arnold, who's going to give the presentation.
All right. Good morning. Share my
Good morning.
screen. Over. Okay. There we go. All right. So today I'm here to present the AMI implementation plan. I'll start by briefly going over some quick background of AMI and why it's beneficial. So from a customer's perspective, AMI is an educational tool to provide further opportunities to use water wisely. From a more technical standpoint, it's a combination of hardware, software, and a telecommunication network that all work together to read meters and send data to the district and its customers in real time. Some of the benefits of investing in AMI is that AMI fits into the district's organizational goal of advancing water efficiency by contributing to demand reduction. One of the ways demand reduction can occur is by providing customers with access to their data through an AMI data portal. The level of conservation is highly dependent on customer engagement, though. The data portal also allows customers to enable notifications for things like leaks and high usage and receive reminder notifications to turn off irrigation systems in the winter and to not water 48 hours following storm events. Another major benefit to AMI is timely leak detection. The district has been able to prove this through our AMI pilot program. The pilot program has about 5,000 AMI meters installed, which is about 8% of all district meters. In 2020, the pilot program caught 28 large leaks and over 1,000 small leaks, saving about 87 acre-feet of water. In 2021, the program caught 210 large leaks and almost 1,050 small leaks, saving about 216 acre-feet of water. This can be seen visually in the graphic. Had this meter not had AMI, the leak may have gone undetected for almost 2 months, but with AMI, the leak was caught early and we saved almost 2 acre-feet of water. Now, the total savings for system-wide AMI won't necessarily be linear savings because the pilot program was primarily larger users and irrigation accounts, which may have been a little more prone to leaks. Additionally, AMI can be a useful tool during emergencies and disasters by showing where there are breaks between laterals and houses and can assist the district with responding to emergency situations. Just a brief overview of our AMI journey. In 2019, the pilot program was completed. In 2020, we conducted a feasibility study for AMI. In 2022, we've just completed the implementation plan. And in the next few years, the AMI journey will continue, where we'll be looking at vendor selection and system-wide integration and installation. Now I'll kind of dive into the main topic for today, which is the implementation plan. So the first task undertaken during the creation of the plan was to create and prioritize goals. The main goals are to enhance customer engagement through an intuitive customer portal, provide timely leak notification for customers, and utilize AMI data to support effective planning. So there's a lot on this slide. I'm not going through it in detail, and we don't have to understand the diagram. The purpose of sharing this is to show that implementing AMI touches all departments of the organization, and there are many different ancillary systems that need to go into implementing AMI, as well as optimization and refinement of our current work practices. This diagram shows that we've developed a working group to support this organizational-wide effort and the robust analysis that went into the implementation plan. The plan also underwent a robust financial analysis, and ultimately the capital cost is in the ballpark of 25 million. The estimate includes everything from meter equipment, network infrastructure, labor, hardware to software integration. The implementation plan recommends both retrofitting and replacing meters, with all meters older than 10 years being replaced. The consultant also evaluated other scenarios for meter replacement, such as replacing meters older than 15 or 20 years. However, the recommendation of 10 years provides the most beneficial business case. Additionally, staff had the consultant develop an initial cost estimate for radio versus cellular options. It's recommended that the district leave the solicitation process open to allow vendors to propose radio, cellular, or a hybrid option. As you can see in the table, the initial cost estimate has cellular being more expensive. However, it's likely the district could end up with a hybrid option, and cellular companies may offer incentives that could bring down the cost.
Can I, this is super helpful. Can I just ask real quick, do you have a short answer for why there is such a big cost differential between those two options?
The
One's just more, I mean, it could be just as simple as one's just more expensive. I'm just a little surprised that that it's, you know, on an annual basis, it's so much more to go cellular.
That's because with cellular, you're going to have like a bill for each point. So each point that has a cell connection is going to like have its own service line. And so you're going to have a cost for each of those points. It's not always meters, but in some cases it is every meter has its own bill.
Okay, thanks. That's really helpful.
Whoops. There we go. So the consultant also facilitated a business process assessment to identify the day-to-day business processes that will be affected by the AMI project. The main goals of this assessment were to ensure the district knows what to expect and know where changes are going to occur. The assessment reviewed operational impacts for the areas in billing, customer service, meter reading, water efficiency, and technology. The last remaining task for the implementation plan was the schedule. The project schedule is for 6 years, with the main system-wide implementation taking 3 years. Year 1 is largely geared toward funding acquisition, RFP development, and vendor selection. Years 2 through 4 are the full system-wide implementation, including all the hardware and software setup, integration, and testing, and customer outreach. Year 5 through 6 is really geared toward data management optimization and continuing outreach and education. The consultant developed the schedule in 2 formats. The one shown here displays all the major milestones for the first 6 years of AMI. They also developed a Gantt chart for the district that includes a breakdown of tasks for each of these milestones. Lastly, the consultant also looked at common customer concerns experienced by other agencies, such as data privacy, data security, and customer health. The main recommendation to alleviate these concerns is for the district to develop an opt-out policy. This approach has been successful in allowing other agencies to successfully implement AMI on full scale. Concurrent to the consultant developing the implementation plans, staff reached out to neighboring agencies of North Marin Water District in the city of Sebastopol, both of which have recently implemented or are in the process of implementing full-scale AMI. North Marin Water District, they completed AMI in 2019, and they combined radio and cellular network to ensure the highest data transfer reliability. They also combined retrofitting and replacing meters, which is similar to what's recommended for the district. They combined their customer portal with billing, which is really important for seeing higher levels of customer engagement in your portal. They also address common concerns with an opt-out program. The city of Sebastopol is currently underway with their AMI project. They're using a tax-exempt municipal lease and purchase agreement. They're going with a cellular network. They're also combining retrofitting and replacing meters, and they also are developing an opt-out program. The next steps for AMI, so we just completed the implementation plan in August, and then the next phase is funding acquisition. We're working on applying for the $5 million Water Smart grant, which requires matching funds, and you'll hear more about that in the next item. And then we're also looking into developing funding alternatives during the upcoming rate process. Once that's completed, the next phase will be development of RFPs. And then finally, the third phase will be the installation of the system-wide AMI. And then, yeah, if you have any questions.
I want to add, the report is in the packet, but you know, the appendices are not included because they're mainly Excel spreadsheets with complicated financial tables, and also the Gantt chart's pretty unwieldy to print in print format. So appendices are available electronically if you'd like to see them.
I have a question. Did you consider, or did we consider utilizing vendor financing? I know that's been done in many places where they will supply the funding along with the machines.
Yes, that has been considered in the plan and will be discussed in the future rate setting process, because the costs certainly differ between the upfront costs versus leasing it over time. Purchase to buy,
Sure.
lease to buy, yeah.
Sure.
I stepped away here for a second, so this may have already been mentioned, but a question I have is, I have had few people, 3 people actually, reach out to me concerned about this and actually don't want it for various reasons. Is there any possibility of making it an option, having an optional element to it? Now, obviously, it jumps out that it's certainly not economically efficient to be putting meters in some houses and not others. So when I talked to people about it, I said, well, would you object if the meter was there but just not activated, so that when you sell your house, the next person, I mean, they may want it and it'll be there. is there any flexibility, any kind of option like that, that puts an element of choice for people into it, at least at some level, even if we had to charge, because presumably those people would be getting meter readers come around to their house. So even if we had to add that to the bill, I suggested that to the people I talked to, and they said that that would be acceptable to them. They would do that. So anyway, what options do we have here?
So that was one of the recommendations from the implementation plan, was that the district develop an opt-out policy
Mhm.
with an associated fee.
Yeah, okay, good. I think from what I'm hearing, I think that probably would solve that problem. Did you get any feedback from either Sebastopol or North Marin on public acceptance?
So they both created opt-out policies to help address the common customer concerns.
Okay, good.
So,
I-
Yeah, then
oh,
the numbers that were shown there seem pretty low for the opt-out. I mean, well, like one of them was 1850.
I tend to agree, Director Russell. We'd really have to look at it and work with the board, down the road on this and look at what the true cost is and, where do we want to begin in terms of charging folks. Certainly at some point, if you have 5%, that's one thing. If you have 40%, you'd really think about, does it make sense in implementation? So I think we would do the assessment wherever we're implementing or broadly in some way and understand where our customers are before we pull the trigger.
And I think Jack's idea is interesting too, that, you go ahead and install it so that it's there and it can be used in the future in the event that the opt-outs don't want it. You just deal with that while they're there and then jump. Of course, some things, batteries may be dead by that point in time, if they just sit there.
just don't put a battery in.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's a good point, which is, would be to have it installed in case people change their mind, even without a point of sale or something, that there is just, a change in interest over time as it becomes more acceptable. It would be really interesting to understand what kind of opt-out rates are being seen, so we can get a sense of just, how has it gone and has opinion changed over time. If there's enough data about that could give us a sense of what the arc of opting out and people opting back in or changing an opinion would be. Similarly on cost, do we have cost savings of implementing an AMI that we should be taking into consideration? So with AMI, do we have as much cost in terms of meter reading or other things, so we can see that number, the number of cost of implementation against any savings that we might have? So
Yeah, we did do a return on investment, at which point would it start paying for itself? And it ranges around 10 to 15 years, at which point you're, saving money because of reduced costs.
okay, that's not to just a couple other points, but I think that's a really significant point to point out, that this is a cost-effective solution for us. I think that the cost of opting out, should reflect the cost that it is to maintain an opted out system for folks. So I agree that I think that number might seem a little low, but we should, I think, see that in that context. From my perspective, I think it's just a matter of when, not if, we go to a system like this. And so my greater concern might be that, is technology changing such that are we opting in at a technology moment where things are rapidly shifting about whether to use radio versus cell or some other technology that would make us wish that we had waited 5 years? And I know that's a crystal ball kind of question, but at the same time, we are seeing such dramatic shifts in this sphere of technology that I want to understand if we are, if we feel confident that we might be making a commitment at the right time.
So that is an item that we discussed with our consultant. And it was built into the implementation plan. And that was one of our goals, was to kind of make sure that the AMI system that we implement is kind of future-proof. And so there aren't, so we don't get 5 years in down the road and realize that, oh, if we would have went with this technology, we would have been better off. We're really trying to pre-plan for that.
It is, Director Schmidt, in my view, a good question, kind of the right question is, and I think it was a far more pronounced issue, obviously, when the technology was in kind of the immature phases, kind of 20 years ago, 15 years ago. It certainly matured and stabilized to some extent, but I do think as we think about the RFP and fashioning it, that would need to be something that we're very focused on.
And I think well, I'd like to hear what staff thinks about this, but I think along, given the time frame that you have for this, it will continue to evolve, probably not massively, but you do have the option of continuing to use the newer systems over the 5-year implementation period, right? So, you'll be able to keep up with technology. Is that fair? No.
I mean, that's a question of compatibility, or how does the technology change
Right.
such
No,
that
my
it-
understanding is that that is what other districts are doing, but I'd like to hear from staff on that.
Same.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two ways to think about it. Will there be a better widget that comes out, which is one risk. The other one, would you put in technology that may be obsolete and unsupported over time, right? Those would be two things we have to think about. You certainly wouldn't want the latter. The former may be a cost of implementation in the continuing evolving, right, technology.
I think we're so late in doing
Yeah.
this that we have the benefit of everybody else's errors.
We do.
I wouldn't be too concerned about that particular issue. And the other thing I would say is it ain't rocket science.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. I was just trying to make just a little point that anyway, I'm just saying we don't have to buy all, 62,000 on one day, right? So if we're implementing some on a schedule, anyway, I think we're all on the same page about this. I think I just want to take a step back and thank staff, because I think this is great. We've all been talking about AMI for quite a long time. So, the fact that we have this kind of well thought out implementation approach now is really great and very heartening. On the cost piece, Crystal, I totally get what you're saying about it paying for itself over time. It sounds like you're taking a view about how it pays for itself in terms of the specifics around, billing and, staff and that kind of thing. It seems to me that there's another cost avoided metric that would be interesting to see at some point, which is, some estimate about water savings. I mean, that at the end of the day, the AMI is really about saving water. I mean, it's about helping the customer and the district understand where water is going and how it's being used. And that is a good in and of itself. But also it's about leaks, it's about encouraging efficiency, it's about providing options for people who want to be more more conservation oriented. So that seems to me to be another metric in terms of assessing cost. So I'd like to ask staff if that's something that they can come back to us with at some point, not immediately, but it seems to me it's another factor in the in the district's investment in this.
Yeah, there were quite a number of factors that went into the, what point does it start paying for itself? And one of them was the savings from not having to treat the water or to import and purchase the water from Sonoma. So that was part of the analysis.
Oh, okay, that's great to know.
We can always come back and give you the details or point out to you offline. And
I think that would be great. And I wouldn't do it off. I mean, I'm happy to talk offline, but I think that's something that would be of real interest to the public as well.
Yeah, I want to echo that. That being able to look at maybe how, I don't know if there's data on how people with flumes devices, whether they have shown a change in water use once before and after installation, or relative to other similar consumers, to give us a sense of how much we might reasonably assume a conservation or reduction in water use by having this information in hand. I think that would be really, really informative for all of us. Thank you.
I do want to chime in and say that the savings that we were just referencing is really highly dependent on the engagement with the customer portal. So it's going to be a crucial element of this full-scale implementation to have the customer portal, have there be a single sign-on integrated with the billing, have there be a huge amount of outreach and education on how to really start to engage the customers and have them, plug into this portal and really learn what their water use is, and to, identify the leaks and such that get the notifications, because that's really how we're going to see that savings come about.
Yeah, I really appreciate your saying that. I think that's exactly right. And have you had a chance to, has that been part of your due diligence and reaching out to other districts and how they've done that in addition to the implementation piece? I mean, the technical implementation piece.
We have been reaching out to them. I mean, the two agencies that we really talked to, North Marin and Sebastopol, they're still working on that as well. Like the outreach will never really stop. It's a iterative process that will just keep going. And I think, as they develop and keep going with their AMI programs, we'll, keep learning from them and see, ways that we can be successful in that arena as well.
Yeah, and also I want to just.
Oh, sorry. I just one last point.
Go
Okay, go ahead.
No, Cynthia, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, we have recognized that our online bill pay portal is quite outdated, and there is an opportunity there to improve the customer experience on billing and then integrate it with the AMI portal for their water use, and that gets the customers more engaged.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I find the online billing very challenging, especially if your credit card has expired. So I'm delighted that that is getting on the radar. But going back to Alicia's point, I was going to make a friendly suggestion. I think it's great that you're talking to these local agencies, these sister agencies. In terms of setting up a portal that's interactive and really successful, you may want to be talking to some agencies outside of the Bay Area or larger agencies within the Bay Area that are ahead of us, that have been doing this already, that I think have been, that are down the road. I think there's some lessons there, particularly about that online interface. And I'm happy to talk to staff offline about that if that would be helpful. But we just don't need to reinvent the wheel on that, is all I'm saying.
Point taken, and I agree.
What is the basis of the proposed annual visits? That seemed a little unusual to me. You said that instead of reading every six times a year, it goes down to one time, that somebody would go out and look at each of the meters. That seemed a little excessive to me.
Generally, it would be to do routine maintenance, make sure the meter box isn't covered or somebody hasn't built something over it. Clear vegetation, just keep them maintained.
So stuff the reader would do routinely, just because you don't have to have the reader. Do you do that by a drive-by then? I mean, if you don't have weeds, would you just pass it and say it's okay?
Yeah, well, right now they would take the meter reading, and then move on.
Well,
I understand now, but
my understanding,
Talking about
Director
that.
Russell, is that that once a year is an approximation of how often, based upon, is something obstructing the meter? Is there heavy growth there? Is the battery dead? Is there a technology issue with a meter? So it's kind of an estimation of the reduction in visits. I think, we'll have to refine that talking. And I think, following Director Kohler's suggestion, some of these agencies that have had AMI for years and years and really understand where they are.
the other thing that seemed a little arbitrary to me was the 10 years. Is there some science-based assessment? I mean, I've been involved with AMI for a very long time, well, 30 years. I mean, well back to the beginning. And one of the pitches that they always made was replacing the meters across the board increased the read of the meter, because meters are set generally at 1.05 105% when they come out of the factory, and then they deteriorate with time. So, and when you change these, you bring them back to that maximum percentage of read. So there was a big it was explained to me that was the primary financial benefit, besides the fact obviously you don't have the meter readers reading the meters.
I haven't heard about the 105%, but typically, right, meters as they age, as you know, the tolerance for reading, especially lower flows, decreases. So you put in a new meter, you capture all the water better than the old meter. And 10 years is a bit of an industry standard to cycle through, and you often check and do validations. But I don't know the details. I know, Crystal, if you know of, or Kristen or Alicia, what went into this, the 10-year.
Well, we do have a very robust meter replacement program, and we are replacing meters on a life cycle replacement period. And I believe that it's between 10 to 20, and at what percent are we towards 10 or 20? I can't give you that number today, but we'd have to get back to you. But we are continuously replacing meters throughout our system.
And does that mean we were using census meters, at least at one point? I don't know if that's still the case or not. Does that mean that all the technologies fit on all the meters?
Yeah, over 95% of our meters are census meter bodies. However, they are compatible with the Badger top that can be used. Yeah, for reading, or cellular endpoints. So they are interchangeable. But yeah, the majority of our meter bodies are census meters. Yeah. The AMI that we've been putting in, the 5,000 meters, all have Badger tops, though. Yeah.
Are those cell tops, Crystal?
Yeah, it's all cellular. We've been installing cellular endpoints.
So
it connects to the actual dial.
I want to tell the board, when PG&E did their smart meter program, Fairfax banned them, and they're still banned. So I think, I'm not sold on AMI, and I just want to say so right now. I'd like to see more data on what's happening with flume, for example. So we have the leak numbers for the AMI sample that we've got, the 5,000. I'd like to see what our leak detection from flume has been, because when Director Schmidt mentioned, whether we're at an inflection point on technology, that is definitely something that kind of sticks in my craw, because flume is, it's sort of this it's kind of a lighter technology, but it's providing, very accurate and quick leak detection, which ultimately is the whole purpose of this, is to save water. So I really want to see a robust comparison, because I think that's a much less intrusive and much less expensive approach. And I think that kind of software in the cloud I think that's what's going to take huge leaps forward in the next few years. And I just don't want to see us sort of focusing on this, what I'll call 20th century technology, when the cloud is really seeming to overtake big data. The other thing, and there's a lot of issues that come up with this, smart meters are still banned in Fairfax. So there's a legal question as to whether that we could install the AMI radio type transmission technology in Fairfax. There's an ordinance on the books in Fairfax. So just so folks know, that's the kind of resistance and reluctance that we came up with. And I've also followed what's going on up in Sebastopol. So just to put that out there. And then the other thing that strikes me is $9.5 million a year for operating costs is in addition to capital costs. You know, 9.5 million could do a lot for our water resiliency. That's a big number in addition to the capital costs. So, you know, that works out to $158 per customer, assuming we've got 60,000 customers. So we could do a lot with that. That's half of our capital budget. Just
What is our current cost? I'm not asking you, Larry. That's no.
Larry, are you referring to the life cycle cost that was added on?
No,
that
the
one?
9 million, the 9 million for
For
the cell
cellular.
phone payment.
For cellular, that was the operating cost. That's
No, that was-
half of, that's
Sorry,
half
that was
of our,
That was over 20 years, though. That was 9 million over 20 years on that slide. It
oh,
wasn't
okay,
per year, yeah.
okay,
Oh,
all right.
I was wondering about that. I think that's why I was so confused. The slide
Yeah,
made it look
that's
like
a
it was
big-
an annual cost.
It's a big number. That's a huge number. So,
Mhm.
So just to be clear, because I think when I looked at the slide, I thought it was an annual cost too. Didn't it say annual?
No, Kristen, do you want to bring that back up? The life cycle costs?
It does say annual.
That's what I thought.
Oh, it is annual.
Yeah. Here we go.
Let's look at the slide.
Yeah, annual operational expenses. So how do you want us to see that number?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was looking at the bottom line, the 20-year life cycle cost.
No, right.
No, we
right.
understand that one.
We
Yeah.
understand that. Right.
so like I said, yeah, that's a big number. So, you know, so I've got a lot of questions about it, suffice it to say. And then a last point I wanted to make with this, and it's kind of embedded in the report, and I apologize, I really have not had a chance to really review the report and read it over, and I would like to get the appendices. But sort of a big issue is privacy, and I can just tell you going forward, and again, I'm going back to my experience with smart meters. Privacy is a big issue for folks, and it's something that needs to be built into the system. It needs to be integrated into the system. And not to go too far afield, but it's a big concern, and you can't add privacy protection on. It's got to be built into the system to protect privacy. And believe it or not, there are a lot of privacy implications for water use in a lot of different areas of the law. And so those are kind of just an overview of my skepticism. You know, and when I went into it, I looked at it really differently than I did for smart meters, because we're dealing with water, which to me is a much more critical resource really than electrical power, even though electricity is so critical now as we go forward with climate change. So it's not to say I don't agree with the overarching goal of saving water and preserving our resources. It's just to say there's a lot of sort of subtle issues that I'm going to need to work through, and those feelings are endemic in my community. So,
Well, the three people that expressed concern to me, privacy was clearly at the heart of it. I mean, that was what was driving them. On the flume concept, right now, correct me if any of this is wrong, but my understanding is that people have flume. It's totally voluntary. They come to us. They, basically pay for it, and it's spotted throughout the district on a voluntary basis. Have we ever done an analysis on a sort of saturation flume as we're doing right now with AMI? We would be out there putting it presumably at every house. Have we ever looked at the possibility of doing the same thing, but not with AMI, with flume?
Yeah.
Crystal, I
respond
think in my view, this is a big topic, and we probably should bring back a comparison, because it is a good question and an obvious one, kind of of our board and the public and look at Flume and look at AMI and help everyone appreciate, that there certainly is some commonalities in terms of leak detection, but there is a lot of programmatic business value in terms of helping to manage water and seeing the big picture. Maybe with Flume you don't get, but instead of jumping into it, I think we should be very thoughtful because it's really a good, important question and bring back something.
And the other thing, Ben, sorry, it's just,
Sure.
We really need to reach out to Flume and to similar cloud-based systems and get a real comparison here. So like I said, I think it's really critical to make that comparison and look at a cloud-based system. It's less intrusive, less expensive, and,
Yeah, so I just need to correct the previous conversation on the operations cost. That is a typo in the PowerPoint.
Right.
The 9 million is for the 20-year term or life cycle. It's not per
Yeah.
year. So
That makes a lot more
typo.
sense.
Yeah.
That does make a lot more sense.
Yeah.
Thank you. I was thinking that seemed really high.
Yeah.
That's why I was asking earlier about the
Crystal-
big, anyway.
Crystal,
so.
can you, I really want to dig into that financial analysis and see how that, and whatever, the annual versus life cycle on
Mhm.
Cell, because Cell to me is a much less, it's going to get less resistance in the community. The radio-based systems are constantly rebroadcasting. Each meter, at least for smart meters, and I don't know the technology on water, but each meter is a rebroadcaster of other data. So you're setting up sort of a mesh network with the meters. That's how smart meters work. And it created a lot of concern because if your meter is a rebroadcasting node in a mesh network, basically people are saying we're getting a lot of RF from this thing rebroadcasting data through the system. So I always thought Cell, which is just like one burst, maybe every 24 hours, and you're getting a huge amount of data in that little sort of microburst of RF. So, but, as I'm sure you looked at the Sebastopol reports about, there was controversy about how many times the Cell system was broadcasting on a daily basis. So anyway, that is kind of underlying that whole health issue that some folks are concerned about.
Yeah, understood. Yeah. So yeah, we can't come back with a comparison between Flume and AMI. The AMI is also cloud-based. The data is put, into a cloud for access. And then one of the largest differences is that Flume requires a Wi-Fi connection to the customer's home because it's a continuous read. And so, so that's a little problematic in some instances because the device is actually installed on their property. We don't have access to it. It relies on their Wi-Fi connection. So yeah, we can come back and show you the pros and cons of either option. But
Yeah, it's just also, it's far less intrusive than AMI, but I get it. I really just have to kind of dive into the whole water saving analysis and all that to really kind of come to terms with it.
Well, and the labor costs, don't forget the labor costs. They're not insignificant. I think, as I recall reading the information, Larry, this current system broadcasts every 15 minutes. So that's the way it's set up. I'm not saying it can't be a different cycle.
No, I think it's grabbing the information every 15 minutes. It's not broadcasting every 15 minutes. So generally, it's definitely going to grab the data every 15 minutes. You get very granular information with AMI, and I assume Flume too has that kind of granularity. But
it has to grab the data continuously. Okay.
Yeah, but it's not broadcasting it every 15 minutes. So, I don't know all the technology on it. So that's something I really need to look into. I did look into the Sebastopol studies and the staff reports up there, and there was controversy, and I think they're now in litigation about it, possibly. I'm not sure. So
yeah, And I've gotten some heat too in my district about the RF side of it. I'd still like to get an answer, Ben, to the question about what the current cost is for collecting this information. And I'll tell you, having the system, I mean, I don't check it routinely, but I do check it often to see how much water we're using. And that's just an option that, you know, doesn't exist in any other format. And the last question I have about Flume is, I'm not aware of it being, well, first of all, I don't believe we have access to the data. So I don't know how that works. Maybe they have to sign a release to allow us to access the data. But that was my understanding, that when the Flume guys have talked, they always talk in system-wide numbers, not in address specific. And the question I have for you is, if you had the Flume system-wide, could you bill from it? Would it be legal?
Right. So let us really bring back a thoughtful presentation. And for your first question, we'll include a breakdown of the costs, looking at our current cost structure, looking
Sure.
at AMI, and looking at Flume as well, to really kind of dive a bit deeper.
And one more question,
Oops.
just one more. If it seems to me very interesting to find out if any of the AMI guys are using the same data transmission system as Flume, that is going through the Wi-Fi, as opposed to having an independent transmission device. Because that seems like it'd be very logical. And I don't know what the saturation of Wi-Fi is, but in my neighborhood, I would guess it's up in the 90% or higher, maybe at 100. Basically, every home has it.
Yeah, and even out here in Fairfax, our cell reception is terrible. So
Yeah.
cell is usually going through Wi-Fi. So there, you know, I think that's why PG&E went to the radio system. But like I said, that has its own set of issues with RF. But the one thing on the comparison with Flume, when we spoke to Carrie a couple meetings ago, she indicated that the district does get leak reports from Flume. So I'd like to see that data, how many leak reports we've gotten, and the timing and the water savings and stuff on that. So
That's very interesting, because that means they do have address specific information that they relay to us, huh? Or maybe they tell the customer the leak occurred.
It's instant. We have Flume. It's instant. If you have a leak, it's like it comes up on your phone. It notifies you. So it's quick.
Right, but it doesn't notify the district necessarily.
I
My
think-
understanding is it doesn't talk to the district, but I could be wrong.
I think it does. And so that's something we need to look into. And I think the district, as far as consumption, is getting cumulative information, not individual. So.
Yeah. Okay, how about public comment?
Yes, we had a couple, and I just want to remind the folks that you have 3 minutes. So let me put up the timer. The first two are Larry Minikes and Ed Jameson. Go ahead, Mr. Minikes.
Good morning, folks. I think it's important to remember that AMI is the direction that a lot of water districts are going in, and that we couch it around that. For leaks, it had caught a leak. I had left a hose running without realizing it at the level. It does, Flume does work. It'd be interesting to know from PG&E what the opt-out rate was, and that might give you guys an idea of what's going to happen. But, and I mentioned this before, it's important for residents to understand the difference between PG&E is that our meters, our gas and electricity meters are on our building, whereas with water, it's generally near the street. So it is generally a long distance from the living quarters, and people need to be aware of that. There should be some concern about coverage and the geography of Marin, and whether you can get full coverage, like places like Woodacre, Lagunitas, you know, places like that, where they're way back there, and whether you can really cover it throughout the district. if AMI is brought in, it would be helpful if there was a mobile app similar to Flume's, rather than having to go online to the district, that we have something very similar so that we can go on our app, we can look at what we're using, we can look at what our kids are using, for example, see our daily use. That would be really useful there. And while folks were talking, I found a study that's coming out this month by a firm called Coherent Market Insights. It's titled Advanced Metering Infrastructure Market Analysis. And that may touch upon what the future looks like. And so I want to just suggest it again. It's Coherent Market Insights is what I found. It's more global, but it might be helpful. And those are my comments, and thank you. I thought all the comments, all the discussion was really helpful today. Thank you so much.
Can I just ask, Crystal, can you clarify? I think, excuse me, I think AMI does allow for that kind of an app.
Yes, they do have cellular apps for AMI, accessing your AMI data.
So, and I think, sorry, I was just trying to go back to the agenda. I think North Marin still has a meter reader to get into the areas in Novato that don't have good cell reception. So our district, you know, I think we're gonna, you know, we would be looking at that. There's just some dead zones right here in Fairfax, you know, Oak Manor, no cell reception. So there's a few little dead spots like that. You know.
The next speaker is Ed Jamison and then Mr. Roger Roberts.
Yes, thank you. I'd just start by echoing Larry Minnike's. This has been a particularly good discussion today by all involved. I'm a kind of a numbers guy, and for a start, 15-year paybacks are really non-starters. There have to be better reasons than financial ones to go ahead with this. There very well may be, but that's just not a very good payback. 15 years is not reasonable. There's also stated an ROI of 38.9%. I don't know how the heck that could have been calculated. That suggests like a $10 million annual profit on a $25 million investment. I'd kind of be interested in seeing the spreadsheet for that. And lastly, on the lease versus buy question, the district can borrow money, I guess, around 3% or thereabouts. No vendor can borrow below probably 6 or 7%. So financially, that is always a non-starter if you can borrow cheaper, and certainly the district can. Those are my comments. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Jamison. And Mr. Roger Roberts, please.
Yes, the current water rate system is not a water budget system, but over time, the district may find itself, particularly under the stress of climate change, moving to a water budget system. And if you had a water budget system, you better have some metering in order to stay on top of that. Thank you.
Thank you. There are no further public comments.
Okay, any other board comments? Okay, let's move on to the consideration of funding opportunities, WaterSmart.
Good morning, board members. This is Matt Segas, the district's Grant and Legislative Program Coordinator. This morning, I'm going to give you a brief update on 2 funding opportunities the staff are pursuing for board consideration. The first opportunity is to support implementation of our AMI program. On July 28th, district staff submitted a grant application to the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation, requesting $4.8 million in funding for expansion of our AMI into the Mill Valley and Marinwood Terra Linda areas of the district service area. In order to initiate the formal application for this WaterSmart grant, the board of directors must adopt a resolution authorizing the general manager to sign and file the grant application. Staff is requesting the operations committee review and refer to the full board of directors approval of a resolution authorizing and directing the general manager to submit a grant application in the amount of $4,807,097 for implementation of the AMI expansion project, and to negotiate and execute a cooperative agreement with the U.S. Bureau of Rec. The second grant opportunity is for our fisheries program. The California Department of Water Resources Riverine Stewardship Grant Program funds planning and implementation for projects that restore habitat for salmonid species. The district submitted a concept proposal to the Riverine Stewardship Program in July of 2022. In late August, district staff received notification that the concept proposal made it through the first round of review, and the district was invited to submit a full proposal for funding. The grant application seeks $650,000 in grant funding to implement designs currently underway for salmonid restoration work in Lagunitas Creek. If awarded, these funds would match the recently awarded $1.4 million in funding from the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation to fund implementation of large woody debris restoration as well as gravel augmentation in Lagunitas Creek, which is anticipated to commence in the summer of 2024. Staff is requesting the Operations Committee review and refer to the full Board of Directors approval of a resolution authorizing the grant application for award in the amount of $650,000 and, if accepted, authorize and direct the General Manager to sign and file an agreement with DWR for their 2022 Riverine Stewardship Program. Thank you.
I just want to jump in here real quick and thank Matt for his great work with WaterSmart. I can speak to both, but I want to spend a minute first on the request for AMI and strongly urge my fellow board members to support this. So I'd like to sort of maybe jump ahead a little bit and strongly urge us to refer this to the full board. Can I just ask Matt, what's the timing on this? Do we need to do this today, or if we just do a board referral, can this be done on consent next Tuesday?
WaterSmart requires that that these resolutions be filed within 30 days of application. We're already slightly beyond that, so I think we can definitely wait until Tuesday for this item.
I was just asking as a matter of process. That's great. I do a lot of work with WaterSmart, and obviously, notwithstanding Matt's very, talent with this, nothing is guaranteed, but WaterSmart has been very good about funding AMI at this level. So I think we're right in their sweet spot. So, and I'm particularly pleased that you're looking to extend this specifically to Marin City. I think it'll be a great thing to have covered that area as well. And I'm just really glad that we're going to be participating in that program. And I strongly urge my fellow board members to support that as well. And I also support the woody debris one, but I'm especially happy about WaterSmart. And can I just ask, Crystal, did any of your calculations on cost anticipate any grant funding? Because that would obviously bring down not the operating cost, but the capital costs.
Right, yeah, we did not have the funding was not identified. That's just the
right.
total.
Right. No, I understand. So I'm just saying, if we got 4 million out of whatever the capital was in the 20 to 30 range, it's not insignificant. So
that's great.
And we can also renew it. You can't, you can go back, multiple times. So I'm not saying we get the whole thing grant funded, but it's great that you've targeted that opportunity.
So, I support both of the grant applications in spite of the issues we talked about. So I don't think, there's no dissent from me on that. On the Lagunitas Creek, Sean, where is that restoration planned? Can you give us a little geographic specificity?
Yeah, so this would all be in the state park section of Samuel P. Taylor. You'll recall just downstream of the Inkwells is where our project would be starting. And so this would be matching the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation grant, which will be for sites, I believe, 2 through 6. And then some of those sites are actually just active gravel augmentation.
So those are in the areas that we toured.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay,
yeah.
So this is just financing for those particular areas. Okay, that's exciting.
Any other comments? Public comment?
There are none.
Can I get a motion to review and refer for the board?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, cool. Thank you all. With that, we're going to adjourn.
Happy Friday.
Yeah.
Happy weekend.
All right.
Thank you all.